Welcome back. Today we're going to do another duo. This time we're going to do the Kinera Celest IgniteX Beast and their Dongle DAC, which is the CD-20. So let's begin with IgniteX Beast, and this is what it looks like. This has a really nice colored, I think 3D printed faceplate. The shell itself is actually shaped a little differently than I thought. I assumed it was going to be more wyvern shaped, kind of a more simpler, more traditional IAM shape. And this one, I would call this one more of an ear hugger. It's got the wing, so it gets a really tight fit. It's got kind of a slightly bigger body to the shell, and that gives you a little bit more passive noise reduction. And I think it's kind of a nicer fit. But, some people don't like the wings, and that will annoy some people. But I like it. I think it's actually a nicer shell than the wyvern shell. You get this black cable, which they probably could have found a better one in their warehouse. Kinera has lots of nice cables. You do get two sets of nice tips, so this is kind of a black silicone version. This one is actually the more interesting one because this is my favorite set. This is the 07 set, if you're familiar with KB07, or I think it's AET07. The 07 set is my favorite set of inexpensive tips, and that is why the yellow ones are missing, because they are sitting on my desk. But yeah, so really nice choice on tips. This one probably not as much, but this one is actually quite nice. So the CD-20, it looks like this, and we'll do this more in detail in a second, but you do get a play pause button, which is also the high-low gain button, and it's also the USB style button, the UAC button as well. So it has a few different modes depending on how long you hold it down. You do get volume, independent volume, so this is plus and minus, and that is not going to affect your phone volume. USB-C, and then 4.4 and 3.5. You do get this USB cable, so kind of a minimal package, and Celeste, I think, is more about a value, and I do think they did hit a really nice value with this one. The IgniteX, maybe not necessarily a value proposition, but more of a 1+1 hybrid, offering a different concept on tuning that they found interesting, and we'll kind of get into that now. So as I said, this one is a one dynamic driver plus one balanced armature. The graph looks like this. And I will say, when you look at their website and the marketing, right above their graph, they call it a tuning concept. And I agree 100%. This is a concept that they are trying. This isn't a traditional Harman style tune. It's probably not even a traditional style tuning that you would find all that often. Once you get into it and look at what they actually did, I kind of agree. It's actually a pretty nice concept. Not your typical Harman tuning. This will be appealing to, I would call it, electronic music fans more than vocal fans. It has a lot of bass and treble engagement. So the bass is quite elevated. You have this big boost here. You have a boost here. And these are kind of your engagement points. And it's a little bit different than your Harman style, which has kind of an engagement point right here. You're sort of getting it before and after, and this kind of fills in the fun bit. So yeah, I agree. I think this is slightly different. I think it's nice that a company like Celeste or Kinera is trying something new. This is certainly something new, and it will appeal to people of certain music genres. I just found that electronic music happened to align with these points a little bit better than vocal music, but that's just my opinion on it. So on the bass, again, this is kind of a full style glide. You have like quite a bit of sub bass. That's maybe about 9 dB, 8 or 9 dB of sub bass. You do get a little boost on the mid bass as well. So again, a nice full size complement to some treble engagement. So as we get here, a little bit mid bass, this rises a little bit early. And again, if you're a vocal fan and you're trying to listen to maybe acoustic vocal music, again, this rising a little bit early doesn't quite align to voices or traditional style music, and I think it just happens to align better to electronic music, and that's why I'll kind of keep on harping on it. This early rise tends to not work as well for, I think, traditional pop and rock. I think it's just a little bit early, and it tends to sound a little bit different. And some brands rise a little bit early to avoid the shout, and that's kind of what happens here. And then you have this dip here. So this dip is about where presence is, and most of us are humans, and we really are tuned to listening to human voices. And when you dip the presence region like this, it tends to affect kind of right in the middle of voices. You sort of notice that they're pulled back or a little bit recessed, and that's kind of what happens here. And then they bump up a little bit later in treble, and you get more engagement there. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't quite align to traditional vocal music, but if you have electronic music, which happens to align here, here, and here, it's a much better fit, and that's why I found it much better on electronic music. But the bass, again, I think the bass is pretty traditional, and it does provide support for the treble or fun music or energetic music, and I think they actually got that right. The mids, again, not really the focus here. I think it's stuck in the middle between quite a bit of bass and this later treble rise, and pulling the presence down kind of really leans into non-vocal music. So there are mids, but this actually sounds more like a traditional V-shaped set because you have this bass bump, and then you have this treble bump, and the mids are going to be sitting a little bit behind between those two boosts. And then treble, again, this boost aligns better to electronics. This early 2K and then a late 10K with a dip between the two. Not necessarily bright, like looks pretty bright, but I wouldn't call it bright. I would just say it's aligned differently than your typical 1+1. Not every music is going to have instruments or sounds that kind of hit out here in the kind of the boost zone, in that engagement zone at 10K. And 10K, again, I talked about this one a little yesterday with Dunu's Brain Dance. When you have 10K that's sitting above your mids, that's going to do some different things to tuning, and with different styles of drivers. This happens to be a balanced armature. So some people are going to hear this as, slightly bright, slightly lifted, slightly thin. It's I just call it engagement. And as I said, it works quite a bit better for electronic music if you're not trying to figure out if this voice sounds natural or not. If you're just listening to fun, electronic, energetic electronic music, this kind of aligns better with that style of music. So that's what I would say on IgniteX Beast. I kind of agree with them. I think it's a tuning concept. People who are into hearing different things will kind of enjoy that style. So on the CD-20, this one, spec-wise, this one is an ESS 9039 Q2M. So very nice ESS chip. It's the kind of the latest model in their portables. It does have a high-low gain, as I said. It does have independent volume. And the power on this one is actually quite high, 250 milliwatts on single-ended and 480 on balance. So, yes, quite a bit of power on this one. If you turn it in high gain, I think those are the high gain numbers. The low gain, I think, are probably about half of that. So, yeah, on high gain, this one is quite a beefy dongle, and it's quite a beefy dongle for the price. And I think they did, again, I think Celest does a really good job at offering a really high value, and I think they actually hit a better value proposition on CD-20, and this is a nice concept, but of the two, I actually prefer the CD-20 and their direction on where they went with this one. And I do think it is recognizable as an ESS sound, balance and extension. You know, ESS has sort of a traditional sound, and I'm very used to that sound, so I tend to notice when it's a little bit off. I notice when the balance is off, and I notice when the extension is off. And I think they hit all three on this one. It sounds like almost a reference style ESS sound. They didn't really change a whole lot of it, but did they change a little bit? Yeah, I think it's a little bit slightly softer, and I can't really argue with that kind of change because it makes it more generally appealing. If you think ESS is too analytical, too bright, too sharp, then you'll appreciate the CD-20 and this small change where they kind of soften it up a little bit. It is a little bit more general appealing. The trade-off will be it's a slightly less transparent, slightly less dynamic. It doesn't have that full range and dynamics that you would get from an ESS, like a full-blown ESS implementation. But, you know, I won't argue with what they did. I think it's actually a really, really nice dongle as far as an ESS dongle goes, and I like ESS dongles, so this one kind of hit the mark for me. Those of you who like CS dongles will probably not like it at all, but those of you who are used to ESS dongles and ESS chips, you'll sort of recognize it kind of right of the way with the balance and the extension on the treble and all the things that they kind of nailed that aren't far from the reference implementations on ESS. So that is what I got on the IgniteX Beast and CD-20. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.